Hey gang, this is Mike, your professor for the business of real estate online and in our face-to-face sections if you're watching this. This is an additional video for week 5 that'll be a shorter podcast to go through the specifications on your semester project, which is worth a quarter of your mark. You may be watching this in week 5 when your professor has asked you to, or you may be watching it a little later because this project will typically not be due until later in the semester. Generally speaking, the typical due date would be at the end of week 11, which we'll talk about right here. However, due to late starts and days off and different things like that, if you're in the face-to-face class, it might be due a little later. Online students, same thing. Sometimes there's late enrollment. Your professor may start a bit late. Online students have a lot more flexibility in scheduling, so it may not be due specifically at the end of week 11, maybe just after that, never before any due dates that would be generally spoken of in my videos. So what you do, as I keep saying, whenever I talk about an assignment in the videos, is this is when it would generally be due within the course plan, but you should always refer to dates in FOL News, in your FOL calendar, and in the submission box if it's a submission box assignment, and always read your professor's emails. So that's your typical due date, but it may be different. So as I mentioned, this is a semester project worth a quarter of your mark, 25%. And check FOL for exact due dates. It is a 3-part project. So you're going to reflect more heavily on some of the things we covered near the beginning of the course, and also kind of spilling into week 7 a little bit. And there will be a lot of self-reflection back onto some of the stuff we did with the work-life balance, although you won't be having to quote things and bring up readings, although you may. And we'll discuss these instructions in detail here in this podcast so you understand what I'm expecting for this assignment. And if I'm talking about what I'm expecting in an online video, that is what your professor will be expecting for the online course, whether he or she is the one who has recorded these videos. You should always remember that as well. So you will have an essay component that will be part of this project. There are 100 possible points in this project. The essay will take up 60, research 30, video component 10. So there's 3 different things you'll be submitting, and these are all described in detail in Fanshawe Online. It's linked from week 5 because that's the week when I intend to or wish for this to come up so that students can plan ahead. But you could be watching this video whenever you get to it. Even if it's a week before it's due, you do still have some time, okay? So just get on it and get moving and give us something good, and we will mark it accordingly. Okay, so this is an FOL submission box assignment, which means your work, when it is complete, will be put into the submission box, including the video in the form of a hyperlink so that we can access the video right there. So those are the basics of the project. It is entitled Me and Myself in Real Estate because a big part of this will be learning about yourself and how you may behave or react in a situation of opportunity if you were to go into this business, which means you could apply some of the same ideas and concepts that you discuss in this paper in another sales commission career, because as I've been saying throughout this class, a lot of the stuff we talk about could be applicable in other careers in sales, even just in general marketing. So let's jump over to FOL and get into this so we don't make this video too long, because usually with instructional videos that are just talking about assignments, I try and keep them down to, well, not too long, less than 20 minutes I'm hoping for. Week 5 details. As you notice in the week 5 details, this does make mention of this. It will link directly to the video once the video is complete. This link would take you to the module that contains the information, which is outside and separate from your weekly module. So I want to make sure you guys understand that. So in FOL content, if I just jump back here, you will have your weekly modules as you see here, okay? And they are broken up into the weekly module section by week, weeks 1 through 14. Some of these are still hidden as I continue to work through this. We haven't got to the second half of the semester yet, so if we jump down below that, you'll see there is a 25% assignment module specifically for this project. So if we go into that, okay, and again, once the video is complete, that link will be added here with the assignment specifications. Your assignment and everything you need to know about it is in this file. So if we click into it, you will see a fairly involved description that covers what you are expected to do. This is a quarter of your mark again, so you're not going to see a couple paragraphs saying, go ahead and do this and we'll grade it up, because there's a lot more involved in this than your typical 3 or 5% assignment. So what I'd like you to do at this point is pause the video, and if you haven't already done so, I need you to go through and actually take some time and read these instructions thoroughly. Like if you need to read them twice, it's not that long. It shouldn't take you that long to read them. And then when you come back after pausing the video, I will go through some of the hot spots in here. Hot spots, as I like to call them in assignments, as being things you want to make sure you're paying attention to, which is kind of all of it, I guess, but I'm not going to read it to you. Okay, so when you come back, we're just going to cover the main points. Okay, so go ahead into FOL content. You will see this outside of the weekly module sitting in its own module because it's a quarter of your mark assignment. And that's the type of weight that it carries, so it has its own module in FOL. So pause the video, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so you're back, which means that you have actually gone through this material, unless you just let the video keep playing and, in hopes that I will read you this entire thing, which I'm not going to do, but I will go through a bunch of the details with you to make sure you understand what I'm expecting, things that are important, and I will talk a little bit about some of the research stuff. As you noticed in the slide here, I said we're going to discuss using research tools a bit for this 30 out of your 100 points, because there are many, many tools, and this isn't a market research class, but I just want to make sure you guys are aware of this stuff in case you don't stumble into that market research course, because there's lots of great resources when you're at Fanshawe College that are at your fingertips that you should be using, and some of which you don't even need to be at Fanshawe College to use, so we'll talk about a couple of those too. So this is a project that has 3 components, as I mentioned: essay, research, and video. We're going to start with the basic description of the project that talks about following the instructions. Make sure you submit by your professor's deadline. Okay, so always check your news, calendar, emails, submission box. You should know when it's due. Your professor will give you exact dates. And then it discusses, well, only some of you may end up in a career in real estate. This is a project that will help you sort of explore yourself, that will help you try to, and that's hence the title, me and myself in real estate. Determine how you might perform in a situation of opportunity. With a little bit of research, expose you to some different aspects of the industry. And then I talk about how you're going to submit the stuff. So the essay itself, which is worth the bulk of the points, so 60 out of the 100 points. So within the quarter of the mark that you get, there are 100 possible points to earn that quarter of your mark. Okay, so out of that 100 possible, 60% of that is going to come from the essay. And I do generally make rubrics in most of my classes, and unless I have an assignment like this where the specifications are so detailed that I can literally list right next to them how many points some of these things are worth within that category. So that's kind of what I've done here. So this, in a sense, is your rubric. But you should know, even though I don't mention it much here, this is kind of a given, that part of the marking when you see these point breakdowns, if it's for written content, will have to do with grammar and spelling. There kind of be a general kind of deduction if I see any of that in these different categories. So be aware of that as well. But we are going to get to the top. Actually, before we jump right into this, that spelling and grammar thing, I do mention it. So if you go down to the bottom, there's just a couple notes on submitting your work and some final comments on grading. So this little section right here, I'm not trying to be ambiguous or vague with the way I will mark this, and that is the way all of my professors, in terms of the way all of my professors will mark this. I'm the course master and the leader in the online course, but you may not have me as your instructor, even though you're hearing my voice. But this is how I'll be guiding my professors through the marking of this, where it's something that I call a narrative rubric. A lot of professors make very short form instructions and then provide these rubrics with the different categories and the traditional educational rubrics, which I do use in a lot of courses. I thought this was an assignment that required a little more detail in the instructions. So the detail itself is, in a sense, the rubric, which I refer to as a narrative rubric. This is something I've kind of come up with on my own that I'm trying to coin as a phrase, because I don't love rubrics, but they work really well for certain things. So my rubric here shows very detailed instructions with specific point allocations next to those instructions. and I don't specifically say why I'm going to take points off other than the obvious, which is you not following the instructions. If you pretty much blow off the instructions completely and give me something else entirely that's not half bad but not part of the instructions, you might get some points, but you're not going to get the full points. Where if you follow the instructions to the T, but you might still have some very bad grammar, spelling marks. It's not that hard to fix that stuff when you're using Microsoft Word. So that's a little bit of professionalism that I'm going to expect from you guys here. So there's just some notes on that here, that poor spelling, bad grammar, incomplete sentences when there should be complete sentences, when I haven't told you it's okay to do point form. These are the kind of things you want to avoid, because that's just losing points for no reason, okay? The main reason I want to see you lose points, the main reason I want to see you get all your points is for following the instructions, which are meant to give you an experience with this assignment that'll actually make you better at the end of it, right? So it'll better prepare you for the business world. I do not want to take points off, but if you lose track of the instructions or you're not adhering to them, your lack of adherence to the narrative rubric, as I say here, or just a general lack of content where you've kind of started to give me what I asked for, but there's no detail, there's no explanation, there's no why. You will lose points because of that. And when I'm grading these papers, as with my other professors, we will always tell you why you're losing points. So in that sense, I did want to make a note, because I'm not providing the traditional rubric that if you have spelling, grammar errors, all that kind of stuff, you're going to lose points. If you do the video and you're swearing through the whole thing, even if it's really entertaining, because I know I showed that Gary V thing in my class, and that's part of his spiel. Generally speaking, if you're approaching a big client, you don't want to go right in there just swearing your head off. Swearing is not something I would ever advise as a general rule when you're in sales. So I will be watching for things like this. I want things to be professional. And even though the video is not a big deal, okay? It's only 10 points. We're going to get to that in a minute, but try your best to provide a delivery that isn't just a complete, waste of effort. Like I want something that you might actually try and deliver to somebody in the real world if you were trying to land some business like this. So put a little bit of thought into it. It's only 10 points out of the possible 100. You could completely just ace the first two components of this project and not even do the video and still do fine. But I really want you guys to try the video, because I'd rather do it that way than make you come into class, and even especially if you're not in the online section, like try and arrange some personal in-person meeting. This is the way of the world today. I've pitched clients in video before, and it's actually worked. Clients are pretty impressed. I have clients that are out of town that ask me to do preview showings for them, and I will walk them through a listing using videos and then send them to them on WhatsApp or FaceTime, whatever it is you have. If you're using iPhone instead of Android, I'm sorry about that. You should be on Android, but whatever. So it's just do your best. This is not a tech course. I'm not expecting it. You go over the top with like bells and whistles and load it up in Adobe Premiere and do all these amazing finishing touches. It can literally be a selfie video. So we'll get to that at the end. But where I identify things are worth points, I will. It is a given that I will still be taking into account the quality of your work, professionalism, just general things that are expected at this level of education, okay? So let's start off with the scenario and topic. So you are done taking all your real estate tests. That's you in this essay scenario. So this is an essay, and there is an essay question, and you are going to create some sort of thesis that has to do with how you're going to handle this situation. You finished taking your real estate exams. You were proactive enough to go and set yourself up with a brokerage, which you can do before you're done with all your tests, kind of be ready to go. So the second you were done with your tests, you got your license, you're with a brokerage, but you literally have no marketing materials. You haven't got things ready yet. You don't have any social platforms, no business cards. You can't go into a meeting and make someone feel that you're a real estate expert as of yet, okay? And this is how your business is going to start. And it may be the same in other sales commissions careers too. And this is why you have to go back to the beginning of the course and try and remember what we talked about. You got to focus on certain things over and above the actual content of your industry, actually real estate. You got to focus on your specialties, your niches, your expert knowledge in one specific area, and you got to flaunt that stuff, right? So what's happened is you finish this testing, you got your license. Everyone, it doesn't matter that you actually have done this or not. This is a scenario I'm creating for you to write this essay about. Each of you are going to think that this has happened to you. And at the same time, somebody in your family or a friend has called you up and said, hey, I heard you're getting your real estate license, and so that you remember growing up, or you used to work for this guy, whoever it is, they own one of the most expensive houses in the neighborhood. I heard for sure that they are looking to sell. They're shopping realtors, and once they sell, they're going to buy something even more expensive. So that is the scenario here, okay? It is important that you understand the scenario. If you have any questions about it, email your professor and we'll explain it in more detail. But I think with the detail that I'm providing here, it should be pretty clear what we're getting at, okay? So this person, as we described near the beginning of the course, when you have those yes people, that whenever you get into sales, there's always going to be those people like your grandma, okay? She's never going to say no to doing business with you, and they will refuse to not pay you the highest commission. That's what I love about grandparents. They get mad if you try and not accept it. So these are yes people, your best friend. Of course they're going to use you. They were going to use a realtor anyway. They might as well have you making the money. This particular person in this scenario is someone that you know well, and it's someone you have connections with. So it's someone you're going to be able to get in to talk to, but they're not a yes person. So the idea behind this essay is that you have to search your personal toolbox. You have to search through your repertoire of what you can pull out, even though you're not an expert realtor yet, because you can't really say that. You've been in the business for 3 days, let's say. What are you going to do to land this business? What could you possibly do? I'm not saying I'm going to read this and turn around and say, oh yeah, that's for sure going to work. This might only work half the time, but to explore these things and think about what you might do in these situations means if the situation comes up, you might actually be ready for it. Okay, so what to write about as it pertains to this scenario? The essay question is, you just got your license, blah, 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 blah. You know the background. How are you going to land this big client? That's the question, okay? So each of your essays are going to be 100% unique because each will have to generate the character profile for who this client is. So I've described this person right here as somebody that owns a really expensive house. They're looking to sell it and they're looking to buy something more expensive, and you know them. What I want you to do, if there's actually somebody like this in your life, is put that actual person, you don't have to use their real name, but put that actual person into the essay as the main character that you're going to be working with. And if you don't have that person, or you're an international student and you really aren't that tied into a lot of business stuff and you don't have that many connections in Ontario yet, you can make up a person, you can make them fictional, but you are to create this character. You don't just say, oh, here's my person, it's so-and-so. I want you to give the person a name. I want them to have a background. I want to know all about this person because that helps me understand if you're on the right track with how you're going to approach them, okay? So here's some examples. So a former boss from your hometown, anywhere Ontario, who runs ABC, this is the person that wants to sell their house and buy something more expensive, and they happen to be there in that town where you're going to work. A longtime friend in elementary school happens to the same thing, right? So the other part of this picture that you're going to establish right away in the introduction is where you plan on working. Now, I know some of you are international students. You're not from Ontario, but this course is fundamentally about the business of real estate in Ontario. Yes, we discuss it in Canada abroad. In some of our earlier lectures, we have a lot of students from India. We got to discuss their real estate market there too, but I'm teaching you here in Canada what it might be like if you were to become a licensed realtor, a licensed salesperson here in Ontario. So I want you to pick a place in Ontario that you're really comfortable with. If it happens to be your hometown right now where you're going to school and you've met a lot of people here, that works too. That's fine. Doesn't have to be a small town, doesn't have to be a big city. It has to be a place that you're comfortable talking about because you're going to do some research on that in the second component. So who's your main character? Where are you going to be dealing with this person? Those are the first two things. Next thing is a general statement about the sort of the main things you're going to cover, like a thesis. Like you're going to be like, I'm going to nail this person down because I know I have this special thing that's going to match up with this person. It has to do with soccer, and I coached his daughter, and blah, blah, blah. It might be something specific, and I'm going to use that to lead into my special knowledge of the area around these sporting facilities, and they want to be out by the farmland, and you make it kind of more brief in the introduction, but because you will build on it in the rest of the paper. So I've given you these examples. You can choose somebody who exists, you can choose somebody fictional, and then you're going to get into how you're going to deal with this. And then I give you a bunch of other examples, and this should be, a few pages of you writing about your life, and each little example could be an entire paragraph, right? So you want to discuss how the things you've done in your life and your spheres of influence might connect you back to this person, and how you're going to turn this person into a yes person. So you do business with them once, and then automatically they're your client for life. That's what you want with a big client like this. Remember, there's no right or wrong answers. You're already set up with the brokerage, so that's good. You got to figure out with a limited amount of time, you're not really going to have time to go out there and make all these marketing materials. You might have time to crank out a social platform or two to show them that you know what you're doing if you think it's relevant. But your main thing is how to connect with this person. What would you do to land this business without having that experience? Because this was the beginning of the course, and this is kind of, as you learn more and more about real estate and marketing, you're getting a basic understanding of the industry from me through this course. So it's not like you don't know anything, and you're going to have taken the tests, and at this point you're going to know a lot more than that even. But you haven't sold a house yet. You haven't had a buyer buy a house yet. You haven't done any of this stuff yet. So you got to go in there with other tools, okay? The essay itself should have a title page. I describe what I want on the title page. Pretty basic. Should be 15 to 1750 words, 1.5 line spacing, 11-point font. Please don't mess with that. I want some consistency so my head doesn't hurt when I'm grading these. Okay, and I'm sure my other professors would agree with the same thing. That's not that long, guys. That is not really that long. This is, most of us that have overly active brains, which I feel is a lot of millennials who I'm teaching right now, and some Generation Z, you guys are cranking that much content out in a matter of less than hours when you're on social, and some of you are influencers and you're doing things like that. You can do this fairly quickly. I know you guys are good writers. I want to see good writing, okay? So, containing the following: introduction, body, conclusion. This is officially an essay. You won't get a lot of these at the college and university level. Most of these are research reports. They are full-on analyses of certain topics where you do literature reviews and just tons and tons of talking about the same. This is more of an exploration of yourself and how you might react in a certain situation. So the introduction, as the introduction to an essay, will identify the main character, but it will also have a brief summary of the strategy or approach you think you can use to land this client. And then what the body will do is talk about the things that you have going on in your life, the niches you have, the specialties, the different aspects of your life that will influence this in a positive way. This should be a paragraph. In the body, you can have a couple paragraphs, maybe a bit more if you know this person really well and there's a lot going on there, that profile the character for me so I understand who you're dealing with. And then the better portion of the essay, and the bigger portion that's worth more points, will be what you're going to need to do to get their business, okay? Methods, strategies, the history you have in the area, specific skills, offerings you're going to bring to the table. Why would this client care about that? Why are you going to bring things up that are going to matter to this particular person? Can you establish specific connections or history you have with this client? You're being asked to show this client that you're more valuable to them than these other realtors that have been doing this for 25 years, okay? So don't lose touch of the goal by regurgitating notes to me. I want this to be personal. I want this to be creative. And I want you to basically just sit down and just put it on paper how you would go into this situation and kick some butt, okay? Closing, conclusion. In a closing paragraph, summarize what you just talked about, reference the character. Again, you know how essays work. Here's what we're going to talk about. Here's us talking about it, and here's what we just talked about. That's intro, body, conclusion. It's the mark of any good presentation, too. So you may have noticed I didn't ask you to do any research for this part of the project. I want you to create this offline, okay? What I mean by that is don't go to Google and start looking for stuff and pumping that into your essay. Sit down and think about you. Okay, remember the title of this project, Me and Myself in Real Estate. Okay, me being you as the emotional person that you learned about at the beginning of the course, with the emotional intelligence and what's going on inside of you and your tendencies to avoid conflict or go with conflict, the kind of things I talked about with me. And then myself being like that thing beside there where you take the emotional intelligence you have and you put it to work and you make the best of it. And that's what's going on outside. It's something that I've just sort of come up with on my own, but the purpose of it is very simple to understand. You're exploring your own reaction that you might have in this situation, your own performance that you might have. And each essay is going to be about you only. Don't sit down with your buddies and try and put it together with them. It's not going to work if you do it that way. So do it offline. I want to know about your potential. I want to know about your skills and your passions and how all this stuff might lend itself to you selling this big client. So it's a personal deep dive, okay? And it's not only going to be beneficial to real estate, but also maybe in other careers. No referencing required, excuse me. That is where we get to the next component. So I'm almost done here. That was the big thing. I mean, that's the big takeaway here, the essay, and it's where I really want you to try and take some. This course, a lot of this is about obvious, common sense stuff. And sometimes those are the hardest courses to take in because so many people now are so used to learning devices and watching videos and just, you're having to listen to my podcast in this online course. But I want you to walk away from this saying, hey, you know what? Even if I don't know how to use every app that's out there, and I'm not that great with every social platform, and I'm only good with a couple of them, and I don't even have an Instagram account yet, and I'm still working on getting my Facebook profile to look half decent, and I don't know why LinkedIn is even used for half the stuff it's used for, but now I'm hearing it's really good for like marketing your business. It doesn't matter if you understand yourself and your skills and your powers better than the next person. Okay, that's more important. Now I'm starting to sound like Tony Robbins, and he's all about being happy. So we're going to do a little bit of research, and I'm sure it's not going to make you happy. All students hate research for some reason, even though it's way easier than you think it is. So what I want you to do here is take that town, that specific location that this person is in and that you plan to do your real estate in the context of the essay, because this doesn't have to be real and this doesn't have to be happening. And I want you to come up with 5 really important questions that you think somebody might ask you if they're looking to sell a house in this market. Okay, it could be totally random. It could be something like this: how wind energy might affect their property value. I used to get that question a lot up in the Grand Bend area when they were putting up all the turbines. But these are some common ones too, and I don't want you to just use mine. You might have some that resemble them, but I talk about that here. So I talk about establishing these 5 questions, and then I want you to go and play around with Stats Canada and just find as much stuff as you can about this location and put it together on a page for me. It can be just a bunch of bullet points. It can be a word table, which are really easy to make, by the way, and that keeps it better organized. It shouldn't take you that long if you're just pumping and dumping it into this sheet. But you'd be surprised how much stuff you can find. So I'm going to show you some quick sampling of this. Here, where was I? Because I do ask you to reference here. So I also want to make sure you know that if you're going to be pulling stuff from articles, especially if they're from professional journals, well, it doesn't matter where they're from, I want you to be referencing it. So I provide you a link right there that takes you to the FanShop page that talks about how to reference stuff. And if you scroll down a bit, it's going to go through APA formatting and how to do it. It's very basic. You can even use Microsoft Word to format it for you. There's tons of stuff out there. I'm sure you guys have gone through it. So I don't want to beat that to death, but I'm just showing it to you. If you take this a step further and you don't want to just Google stuff, you can use Google Scholar. That's another good one I don't even mention in the instructions there. Google Scholar is something that sort of does what Fanshaw's library database is going to do for you, but you don't always get the full versions of the articles. So when I search here, it'll search either case law or articles, and this will search based on academic publications and general articles and periodicals, right? It could come out of a magazine or newspaper. If it was considered good for educational purposes, it will be added to their database. So you can use Google Scholar, but you can also just as easily, especially at Fanshawe College, and I'm doing this without even being on campus. Now I want to see in the video here if I can still access the article I found. So if I go to research and I go to Getting research guides. There's research guides actually has different collections of stuff for each program. So if I go to the Kinlan School and I just randomly decide I'm going to go to marketing, okay, I can go into articles. So these will be articles that have to do with marketing and business and, the 4 P's of marketing, which could do with pricing and stuff like that. So I was digging around trying to find stuff, and you just start using keyword combinations and see what you can find. And I found, where did it go? I found an article on that question people used to ask me about, wind energy and the perceived development. So I need to be logged in to do this. So if you're on campus, you're going to be logged in automatically. Otherwise, I have to go through my Fanshawe to get access to that. So it does, at least you can see what you're looking for off campus. But then let's see what it says when I go. Yeah, so there's all these logins. So if you do this on campus in the library, you won't have this issue at all. And I'm not even 100% sure as students if you can do that. When I log into my Fanshawe here, I should be able to access those resources through my Fanshawe, and then I'll be able to pull the articles off campus. But generally, you're going to need to be on campus to do this, which is why we have Google Scholar, because then you don't have to be connected directly to the database, because these are not free subscriptions, right? So I'd have to log in, and then I go through my path to the library resources, which as a student, you're on campus all the time. And if you're not, if you're in my online class, I'm talking about being on campus, you may not be in there. You should be able to access those resources through Fanshawe online. So that should be done. Okay, so sorry, I'm kind of going around in a circle there for a minute, but I shouldn't be just taking you directly. It's fine to take you directly to the links if you're logged into FOL, but what I did was I went back to the FOL main page. I went through here to the digital library, and I've had the library assistants are so amazing. They come into our classes and show us this, so it would have been a shame if I didn't show you the right way. So you go in through here, it takes you right to the same place, and then I'm officially logged in the right way. So at that point, I can go right back to the same link right here, and when I click on it now, it works. Okay, I don't have to go through and log back into EBSCO, which is the subscription-based public for these periodicals, and I can access the full text right here. I go here, click full text. So this is a big deal that you have access to this when you're a student, because otherwise you'd have to pay for all these journals, or you can go to a library and get the journal, but this is an article that I think would have helped me to answer that question for those particular clients. It talks about how they did the research, who participated, and what the selection was, and what the results were. They even have quotes from people. This is kind of a neat article. Nobody's even come to see the house. And my hunch is when they drive westward, they come to that point where they see the 18 turbines and they say, "What is this?" And they turn around and go back home. So this was a very contentious topic when these turbines first came out. As a licensed real estate sales representative in an area where there are tons of these, I will tell you that over the last couple years, since they've been there for 5 or 6 years, but over the last several years, once they were there for a while, it doesn't even come up in conversation. It's like people don't even notice them because they're so used to seeing them. And I have yet to see any conclusive evidence that these things cause any harm. You know what? I don't like the turbines, but I don't like the wind turbines because I think that they were a complete economic disaster because certain governments got really behind them, given the fact that it was purported to create more clean energy when the amount of waste and toxic stuff that goes into the creation of these devices just in general is already just as bad as the energy that would have been created without using wind energy. And then they expire after a certain amount of years, and they have to just dismantle them and take them down and put up new ones. So the cost of it never actually pays itself back. The economics of it make no sense at all. I don't know how the heck Canada ever allowed it. Other countries have tried it ad nauseum, and it never works. It never ends up saving them money. And I'm sure with smaller turbines, there might be better environmental repercussions, positive stuff. But anyway, that's not the... See what's happening here? Do a little research, and you got all sorts of stuff at the tip of your finger. So I didn't mean to turn that into a big thing on, turbine energy and the effects on real estate, but that's what was happening there. So back to this has got to be over a half an hour by now, but that's what happens because these are important projects and I need to talk about them with you. So come on. What are we at? Oh, geez. Okay. So, this was meant to take up most of an hour class in my face-to-face class, so I guess that works. So use the resources that I'm directing you to. You can also go to the local, provincial, and national real estate associations. You saw in my notes and various places where I've referenced stuff from them, and that's usually available for free online. So anything you reference, you got to reference APA, and it should be down at the bottom of the page when you do that, okay? Then, second part of the research piece, I want you to use Stats Canada, go to the location where you're working, and just try and pull as much stuff as you can. So if you don't have a lot of experience with the StatsCan website, this link will take you to the Fanshawe College page that helps walk you through it. Or you can try and dive right in, and I recommend to just focus on geography and census. You will find articles and stuff like that and studies that were done specific to the areas you're looking at. There's that Stats Canada page on the Fanshawe Library page. And then here's Stats Canada. So if you're running out of time, you've already spent too much time in the essay, just get into geography and type in your town. So if I go in here, come on. Okay, I can. And there'll be all these different categories too, which is really neat. So I can search for the town and then see where it comes up. It's probably going to come up in Lambton Shores. Okay, there's an article about housing. Huh, interesting. Okay. I might even focus more on census. Census is probably the best one. Type in your town. Grand Bend, Ontario. Map, Lambton Shores Municipality. That would give you more of an idea, because Grand Bend is really not that big. Okay, within the city boundary or the town boundary of it. So in 2816, it was just approaching. So you have the percentage change. You have total private dwellings. You have private dwellings occupied by usual residents. So this means that there are this many private dwellings and only this many are lived in all year round, which means the rest of them are cottages. It's population density, your demographics, which is really cool. Okay, you can start to see that changing. And it compares everything to the province of Ontario. So these are just basic stats, but this is really good for real estate. So household and dwelling characteristics, it talks about the type of houses there, and it talks about how many families are. So if you're going to go into Grand Bend and start cranking out like 5-bedroom houses, you need to pay really close attention to what these numbers are telling you. Most of the people living in these houses are couples with no kids, which means they're probably all retirees. They're actually Heartland retirees is what they call them. So you can go in there and just start pulling data and infer all kinds of stuff from it. And I would definitely start with the census page, and then maybe after see what you can find in geography, or just generally searching the entire website for anything that mentions this particular location. I would put it in quotes if it's multiple words. Why does that article come up? That's interesting. So I'd have to look into this a little bit more. I don't know why that's coming up when I search Grand Bend. That's weird. But I'm not going to do that in the video. And this is something you could do and then possibly put that information in your research. So this will be submitted as the final pages of this report. Okay, so you don't need to make another cover page. You just attach it to the end and as an appendix, and that's fine. Then I want you to do this video. It kind of speaks for itself. I'm not going to get too into the details on this. I just want you to try it out. It's only worth 10 out of the 100 points. Pretend the person you're trying to present to, the person you're trying to pitch and sell, is on the other end of this video, and you have 1 to 2 minutes to tell them about the best reason why they should use you, even though you haven't worked in real estate that much. So really digging into that kind of stuff we talked about in the first few weeks. And give it a shot, okay? If you don't have a YouTube account, it's very easy. You just need to start a Gmail. This is something that, if you don't upload a video to YouTube at least one time in your college career, there's something wrong with the program. Like, you guys should be creating your own video content so that you start to get comfortable with this. And in a career like real estate, you're going to be doing this constantly. And I do have videos that aren't always just presentations on specific properties, but videos where I'm just talking about real estate in general. And I want to start doing more of that stuff because that's the kind of stuff people relate to. So here you'd be doing a short video where you're going to show me what you talk about with this person. Okay, and that'll be the last component you submit. And all I need for that is the link. If you end up putting the link in the paper and have to find it in there, that's fine too. But what I want you to do is when you go to submit something in FOL submissions, there's always that little section. When you go here and you go to submissions and you click on the box where you're going to submit, you'll have that little section where it'll offer for you to put notes in there. That's where I want the link to your video. Okay? And those are all three components that'll be included. I spent a little more time than I wanted to, but I did want to make sure you had a full understanding of what I'm expecting here. Always go back to FOL for the due date. This talks about the course outcomes this project contributes to, and that is your big semester project in a nutshell via this podcast and the instructions, which are going nowhere, and they will be there all semester. So if you don't get to this until week 10 or 11, or I don't know when it's due, maybe it's due in week 12 because your professor's extended it, that's fine. Just get to it when you can and don't leave it right till the very end, because this is something that could be really good for you and could be fun, and it will require a bit of time though. Okay, so that's it. Questions, email your professor. As always, watch for the due dates and get this thing done. It's worth a quarter of your mark. It's the most important assignment you'll do besides your tests, which is why it deserved its own video. I will see you next week for week 6. Over and out.